Am I the asshole for waking up the whole family downstairs at 2 a.m. because they thought they could park and block my driveway overnight? Living in New York has taught me that people will test your patience in ways you never imagined possible. But I genuinely didn't expect one of the most frustrating moments of my year to involve standing outside my own duplex at 2 in the morning, debating whether to tow someone's car while trying not to wake up an entire household. I live in a duplex in New York City. I stay upstairs, and we rent out the downstairs unit. Overall, things have actually been pretty relaxed between us. We're not one of those landlords or neighbors constantly looking for reasons to complain. They have friends over all the time, sometimes parties, people hanging around outside late, music, kids running around, whatever. As long as they respect the property and don't become insanely loud in the middle of the night, I mostly leave them alone. Honestly, I prefer it that way. I'm in college right now. I've got enough stress in my own life, and the last thing I want is constant neighbor drama inside the same building where I live. But there's been one recurring issue that's slowly been driving me insane: the driveway. Technically, the driveway belongs to my unit. Everyone downstairs knows that. We've talked about it before. Their guests know it too, because the downstairs tenants have literally told people not to block it. And yet, somehow, certain people keep acting like it's optional information. A couple months ago, one of their friends parked directly across the driveway around 7 in the evening, completely blocked it. At first, I honestly thought maybe it was temporary, like maybe someone was dropping something off quickly. But then an hour passed, then another. Eventually, I went downstairs and asked whose car it was. One of the guys casually said it belonged to his friend. No apology, no urgency, just completely relaxed about the fact that somebody had blocked my access to my own driveway for hours. I asked nicely if he could move it, and also said something like, "Hey, just don't block the driveway again." The guy barely even reacted. He moved it eventually, but the entire interaction had this vibe of, yeah, whatever. You know when somebody technically listens to you, but clearly doesn't actually respect what you're saying? That. Honestly, I should have realized right then that it would happen again. Fast forward to a few nights ago. I had been out late and got dropped back off at home around 2 in the morning. I was exhausted, like genuinely exhausted. The kind where you just want to get inside, shower, collapse into bed, and stop existing for a few hours. As soon as I turned onto my block, I saw headlights reflecting weirdly near the driveway. And instantly I knew. Sure enough, there was a car parked directly across it again. Not just slightly blocking it either, completely blocking it. Actually worse than the first time. Part of the car was even sticking over toward the neighbor's side. I just stood there, staring at it for a second in disbelief. Because honestly, what kind of person does that after already being told not to? And the worst part was that I immediately recognized the car. Same guy, same friend from before. At that point, I was standing outside in the middle of the night trying to decide what to do. Because honestly, I had two options. Option 1, call parking enforcement or a tow truck. Option 2, wake everybody up. And trust me, I seriously considered the first option. In fact, I probably stood there for 5 full minutes debating it in my head. Part of me thought, you already warned them once. Just have it ticketed and towed. Actions have consequences. But another part of me knew that if I did that, it would instantly create nuclear-level tension between everyone in the building. And honestly, despite how annoyed I was, I still didn't necessarily want to escalate things that far. At least not yet. So eventually, I decided I'd give them one last chance to fix it themselves. I walked up to the downstairs door and hit the doorbell. Then I held it down for like 10 straight seconds. And before anyone says that was excessive, yes, I know it was loud. That was the point. Because if somebody's inconsiderate enough to block my driveway at 2 in the morning after already being warned once, then clearly being polite the first time didn't work. Also, they have a kid who goes to school in the morning, which honestly did cross my mind. That's actually part of why I hesitated originally, because I knew waking the house up would probably wake the kid up too. But at the same time, why am I the only person expected to be considerate here? Eventually, I heard movement inside. Lights turned on. The downstairs tenant answered the door, looking completely confused and half asleep. I told her calmly, "Somebody's blocking my driveway again, and I need them to move the car." The second she looked outside, her expression immediately changed to that exhausted, "Oh my God, seriously? Look," which honestly told me this probably wasn't the first issue this guy had caused for them either. Then came the waiting, and honestly, this part annoyed me almost more than the parking itself. Because instead of immediately rushing out apologizing, the guy took forever to come outside. Like 5 whole minutes. At 2 in the morning. While everyone's standing around tired and irritated because of a situation he created. Finally, he came out looking visibly pissed off. Not embarrassed, not apologetic, annoyed. At me. Which honestly made my irritation spike instantly. The first thing he said was, "You really had to wake everybody up for that?" And I remember just staring at him thinking, "Are you serious right now? You blocked my driveway at 2 in the morning after already being warned before. And somehow I'm the unreasonable one because I made you deal with the consequences?" So I told him, "You're blocking me in and I need to leave." Then I added, "Do it again and I'll have it towed." Honestly, I wasn't even yelling. I was just done being nice. That's when he started getting aggressive. Not physically, but loud. Cursing, talking tough, acting like I was some spoiled kid power tripping over a parking spot, instead of somebody asking not to have their property blocked. Then he hit me with, "Well then you'll have to pay for it." And honestly, that's the moment I completely lost patience. Because the arrogance of saying that after creating the problem himself was unbelievable. So I looked at him and said, "Fucking watch me." At that point, the whole interaction basically turned into a standoff. He kept cursing at me while slowly moving the car like he was trying to prove some point. And honestly, maybe I shouldn't have kept responding, but I was irritated enough that I started talking back too. At one point, I literally said, "That's why you're out here moving your car right now, yeah? Keep it moving, buddy." And honestly, I know that probably sounds immature, but the guy was over 40 years old. 40. And somehow acting less mature than everyone involved. Meanwhile, I'm standing there as a college student at 2 in the morning, arguing with a grown man because he apparently thinks basic parking rules are optional. Eventually, he finally moved the car, and the second he did, I just turned around and walked back upstairs. I genuinely didn't even want to continue the argument anymore. At that point, I was too exhausted to care. But once I got upstairs, I checked the security cameras. Mostly because I had a feeling he was still furious, and I wanted to make sure he didn't do anything stupid afterward. And honestly, the footage almost made me laugh. Because after moving the car, he just stood there staring at the driveway with this angry, defeated expression. Probably because both cars were still there, meaning he realized I wasn't bluffing. If he had refused to move it, I absolutely would have escalated things, and I think he finally understood that. The next day, things felt incredibly tense around the property. Nobody downstairs directly confronted me, but you could feel the weird energy immediately. The kind where everyone suddenly becomes overly polite because they know conflict happened, but nobody wants another explosion. Part of me wondered whether I overreacted. Maybe I could have just called a tow truck quietly and avoided the argument entirely. Maybe holding the doorbell down for 10 seconds was unnecessary. Maybe I escalated things emotionally instead of handling them calmly. But honestly, the more I thought about it, the less guilty I felt. Because this wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't some innocent mistake. This was somebody knowingly doing something inconsiderate after already being warned before. And I think that's the part that really bothered me, the disrespect. Because parking in front of someone's driveway isn't just annoying. It sends a message. It says, my convenience matters more than your access to your own property. And once is careless, twice is intentional disrespect. Especially in NYC, where parking culture already makes people insane. Everyone here knows blocking driveways is a huge deal. You don't do it unless you genuinely don't care. A few friends I told the story to were split. Some thought it was hilarious. Others said I should have just towed the car immediately instead of waking the entire household. And honestly, part of me agrees with that. Because the people downstairs technically weren't even the ones blocking the driveway. Their guest was. And unfortunately, they got dragged into the situation because of him. But at the same time, if your guests repeatedly create problems on a shared property, eventually that becomes your responsibility too. That's just reality. One friend specifically said, "You sounded way too aggressive." And honestly, maybe I did. But I also think people underestimate how frustrating it is to repeatedly deal with somebody ignoring boundaries after already being warned politely. Because here's the thing. The first interaction was polite. Very polite. I asked nicely, no drama, no threats, no attitude, and clearly that accomplished absolutely nothing. So by the second incident, I wasn't interested in acting endlessly patient anymore, especially at 2 in the morning. Another reason I don't fully regret it is because I genuinely think some people only respond to consequences. If I had quietly squeezed around the car, or waited until morning, or politely apologized for bothering him, nothing would have changed. He would absolutely block the driveway again eventually. Now, I guarantee he won't. And honestly, maybe that's worth one uncomfortable night. Still, I do keep replaying one part in my head. The kid. Because even though I was angry, I do feel bad if the child got woken up because of the situation. That genuinely wasn't my goal. But at the same time, I also think adults create environments for children. And if adults repeatedly ignore reasonable boundaries, eventually conflict happens. That's not really on me. The more I think about the entire situation, the more I realize the actual argument wasn't really about parking. It was about entitlement. Because the guy genuinely acted offended that I expected immediate access to my own driveway. That mindset honestly blows my mind. Like somehow his convenience should outweigh my right to enter or leave my own property. And maybe that's why I got so irritated. Because there's a certain type of person who constantly pushes boundaries just to see what they can get away with. Then, the moment someone finally pushes back, suddenly they become the victim. That's exactly how this interaction felt. He acted like I was unreasonable for waking people up. Meanwhile, nobody forced him to block the driveway. Nobody forced him to ignore the first warning. Nobody forced him to park there again. Those were all choices. And honestly, I think deep down he knew he was wrong too. That's why he moved the car instead of continuing the argument. Because if he genuinely believed he had the right to block the driveway, he could have refused. But he didn't. He cursed, complained, talked tough, then moved it anyway. Which tells me he understood perfectly well that he was in the wrong. He just didn't like being called out on it. So now I'm left wondering whether I handled the situation badly, or whether people just expect others to tolerate disrespect quietly in order to avoid conflict. Because honestly, after thinking about it for days, I still can't convince myself that asking someone not to block my driveway, especially after warning them already, makes me the asshole. If anything, I think they got lucky I chose the doorbell instead of the tow truck.